So is this anything more than the repackaging of TikTok? What are we missing?
Hi, Sherry. Thanks for inviting me back. Well, I mean, I think that when you look at this, is the president gave a head nod today that to approve the deal, but the Commerce Department extended this for at least another 7 days while things work out. This is absolutely a restructuring of how TikTok is doing its operations globally, creating really two separate companies, the first being TikTok Global, which is what everybody's talking about, but there'll be a second company that is going to be a subsidiary of TikTok Global, which will be TikTok US, to address some of the president or the administration's national security concerns about US citizen data. So there's really kind of actually two deals, or a big deal global TikTok, and then a secondary deal of TikTok USA.
So considering the initial demands from President Trump, how much sense then does this make for ByteDance and restructuring the company? And given that we still haven't heard from Beijing, does this make sense for them?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think the most important thing, if you look at it from a ByteDance perspective, is the quote unquote evaluation or valuation of the company. And it looks right now they're trying to get a $60 billion valuation of the company, and then allow it to go public or IPO in about a year. And usually when you're looking at these deals and you're looking at it primarily from a financial basis, you want to drive the valuation up to make as most money as you can. And as you said in your introduction, ByteDance still has its Chinese operations and still maintains control over the algorithm, which, in my opinion, is sort of the crown jewels of what makes it special.
Melissa, how much do you see this as being a one-off commercial transaction that was brought about by political pressure? Or is this the start of an ongoing theme that you would expect to see repeated across, U.S.-China tech?
Yeah, so this is what I worry about, is that, this is part of the broader technology decoupling of our two countries, and we're using our different rules or policies or authorities within our countries to drive that wedge, and forcing choices between our companies and then its overall customer base, unfortunately. In the United States, the Secretary of State Pompeo announced the Clean Networks Initiative, and it's a 5-point plan that specifically called out Tencent, Alibaba, and Baidu, but in it sort of ghosted that it would include China Telecom, China Unicom, and maybe even Huawei, Marine, and et cetera. So I worry that this is just the first of the first set of initiatives coming out of the United States. As you know, the executive order that was aimed at WeChat and at TikTok were derivative of another executive order that was broader about supply chain and the technology supply chain to U.S. telecommunications and broader network infrastructure that was released last May 2019. So this is the first beginning of the execution against some of these companies, and I fear that this is only the beginning.
And in fact, that execution using the emergency order, which seemed unprecedented and quite shocking at the time, does this now become kind of the new way of putting political, geopolitical and diplomatic pressure on China?
Yeah, this administration is using the Emergency Economic Powers Act in unprecedented ways, really kind of unforeseen, and it gives the president sole authority, does not need congressional approval or any other things to move forward on things that he or the administration believes is a national security threat. It has broad authorities, and so it is being used again in unprecedented ways, and because there are no real checks and balances on this particular authority, it gives the president really carte blanche of determining the national security need and allowing him the power to, or the president the power to block or to limit things.
Melissa, so on those national security concerns, the whole point about the algorithms remaining in ByteDance's hand is that security experts were saying that this could be manipulated by Beijing to run information campaigns, influence campaigns, even affect the U.S. election in November. Are those concerns then still there if the algorithm stays with ByteDance?
The national security concerns that have been stated was more about the use of the data of the data of 100 million American citizens, that could be used to profile Americans, invade their privacy, etc. So under the framework of the deal, and again, there'll be two different companies established. One will be TikTok Global, which has been reported to going to be headquartered in Texas. And then there's going to be a second, which will be TikTok USA. And between the two, TikTok Global is going to have an overview of all of the data and data flows, the physical and logical data flows. It'll have overview of the entire technical operations of TikTok Global, meaning all of its offices around the world. It will have a review of all of the source code and updates, etc. And then and there'll be a separate TikTok USA that will be responsible for all the American data. And that's really where the national security requirement of this deal came into, is about the data of Americans.
So how do you view China's growing power here? Because what's your view on not only just TikTok, but the fact that there could be something like TikTok? What does it say about China's growing soft power, where it could really entice millions of young Americans to use this type of their service app? Is this a trend now that the United States will be very careful of going into the future?
Well, I think that this is largely still driven by market forces. TikTok, in my opinion, is not a national security threat. It was a threat to Facebook and Facebook's users and its growing customer base. And so when you think about this as political, of bringing in that Facebook complained to the president that this was something, and then Senator Rubio decided to have it be looked at from a CFIUS perspective, Committee for Foreign Investment in the United States. Unfortunately, I see this as market dynamics being played out in politics. The Chinese soft power, though, is being implemented through its Belt and Road Initiative and its Digital Silk Road Initiative. And its companies are actually collecting a fair amount of data, not on just Americans, but of people all around the world, and creating those profiles. So there is a sense of that we should be concerned about the broader Chinese strategy. But when it comes to the TikTok deal, I think that's really just competition and market forces of the American companies versus the China company.
Right. So you mentioned the data privacy issues, the data collection concerns already. Should there be more of a concern over the threat to democracy, to democratic free speech, and the censorship that's being practiced in localized markets by apps like TikTok? And obviously, we know that's the case with WeChat.
I think that it's important that we take a very balanced view of how all of the social media platforms are collecting data, storing data, and using the data, and what is the overall policy or legal aspect that demands content delivery or content takedown. And within the United States, we need to think about this at both a data privacy consumer protection, but also from our perspective of freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, which does not transcend all around the world. But we should be looking at this in a balanced view. How is Facebook handling it? How is Twitter handling it? Not just how are the Chinese companies handling it? And at that point, it requires a much broader policy and legal discussion in the United States.